Welcome to the kind of end of May edition of Sharing Sox. I'm duty geezer Leigh Allan with me, my son, and once again, West Coast correspondent Will, since he's done with a play in Cincinnati and back home in LA. As we look at a day where we're recording this on Friday, the 30th of May, before the game that got advanced several hours because they expect storms in Baltimore, and 2 days after the game that got advanced even more hours because they expected big storms in New York, which worked out really well for the Sox because neither pitcher was at all happy with having that moved up. You could tell from the way, I'm sure they were smiling, but that they were out of sorts. They didn't pitch well, and the Mets pitcher was much worse than the Sox, so that paid off. We'll see if that happens again with the game. It's only advanced about 3 hours, I think, on this afternoon. And into Baltimore, which is battling the Sox for the worst record in the American League,
which is
amazing.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, I do this pool with a bunch of famous old guy Broadway people at the beginning of the year, guessing the division winners, the pennant winners, that kind of thing. It's not for any money, it's for bragging rights only. But it was almost across the board Baltimore winning the AL East. And most of these guys are Yankee fans. So having it be almost across the board, Baltimore is just I'm at a loss. It's
as we speak, they just put Cedric Mullins on the IL. So they're going to be even worse because he's been their best hitter.
He's been their best hitter. My fantasy baseball team confirms this. Yeah, I also have Adley Rutschman, who has been a liability in fantasy baseball this year, which is crazy. Yeah, the Sox battling Baltimore for the cellar of the AL is... I'm not a betting man, but I would not have put money on that. I can tell you that. That's for sure.
No.
Crazy. Meanwhile, I went on an epic rant about the Rockies, being so much worse than the White Sox and the White Sox not being good at being bad enough. The Rockies still have not won 10 games. 10 games.
They could go through May without 10 wins.
So I sent you a text message the other day that said, the Rockies now have more losses than the 2001 Seattle Mariners. And I realize I'm using the loss column for the winningest team in the history of Major League is that Mariners team. But I sent you that text on May 24th. On May 24th, I sent you that text. I mean, absolutely bonkers what's going on there. It's been really interesting having a season where I expected the White Sox to be the talk of the town again in terms of being the worst team in Major League Baseball, and they're not even in the conversation. Even in the conversation.
No, they haven't got a crack at it. They'd have to lose 21 in a row, and they still have a 5-game lead.
Yeah, absolutely. We have not had the White Sox have not had quite the miraculous turnaround post Pope election that I was expecting and hoping for from our Chicago brother Bob. But they've shown some signs of some interesting things happening. Maybe first and foremost being that Miguel Vargas is now coming onto the scene as our best trade bait.
Oh no! You got 5 more years of team control.
I know, but I'm saying if Miguel Vargas keeps trending the way he's trending, is he the guy you can get a great prospect package for right now? I'm so flummoxed by this rise of Miguel Vargas.
I think you have to keep Vargas unless it turns back around again. But he's obviously, since they made that change and how he holds his hands, been fantastic. You got to keep him.
But you're only keeping him if you think that that's going to stay. Do you think that Vargas is? Right. Do you think this is real? Are you buying?
Well, it's been a while now. It's not like it's been 2 weeks and the the league has started to adjust. They haven't. Now they have started to adjust on Edgar Quero. He's
Sure.
been going pretty well downhill. Interesting thing on Quero, incidentally, while I've mentioned him, I looked up. Not only is he, I think, 7 for his last 40, which has brought him way down. He has incredible splits. He's a switch hitter. The switch hitters often have splits anyway. One side will have more power, the other side better average, whatever. His splits are incredible. Against left-handers, his OPS is 836, I think. And against right-handers, it's 530 something.
It's not
So,
a good
there have
thing.
been guys who they make it to the majors and they cease being switch hitters. And this may be a case, maybe not during the season they do it, but in the off season and spring training, maybe they want to just make him a right-handed hitter.
Well, you see that quite a bit actually. We actually saw it from Tommy Edman for a little while last year in Los Angeles before he got hot. He was just excelling so much more from the right side of the plate, particularly his power numbers were so much higher from the right side of the plate that he kind of hung out there for a little bit until he got his groove back on the other side. Um, those are some pretty nasty splits there, though. Those
Oh,
are
those are huge. Now, it's not a power thing. He hasn't hit a homer either way, but he's looked really good right-handed, and he has looked left-handed, and the numbers bear that out. One of the problems that comes with it is of your now, because Matthijs is gone, your other two catchers for the rotation of the next many years also both hit right-handed, and you
right.
really would prefer a left-handed hitter. So maybe they'll work on his lefty batting instead of working on converting him to just one side. But that's kind of an interesting fact there. But I think you've got to keep Vargas, you got to keep Quero and Teal in the minors, and you got to keep Hydroth, who we've got to. You don't hear it, but here in Chicago, we've had a substitute for Steve Stone this week. Dan Plesac has been doing the color with our idiot announcer. And Plesac took a game and a half to learn Mydroth's name. He kept calling him Meadrock. So eventually somebody talked in his ear, got him to say it right. Incidentally, Plesac is interesting. You know your mother pays absolutely no attention to sports or on the TV. Even she noticed, boy, those guys talk a lot. He never shuts up. I don't know if he's done a lot of radio in his background. Radio dead air is a crime. Television, dead air is a good thing. You let people watch, and then maybe make a comment on what they watched or something, or help them along with who the next batter is.
Yeah.
He never
Vin
shuts up.
Scully.
I mean,
Yeah.
never. And I think Shriven, just to have somebody who's worse than he is, prods him to keep talking.
Here's what I'll say though. I did actually watch some White Sox baseball. Uh, Anything that keeps Griffin from talking is fine with me.
Yeah.
If he wants to get on there
Well,
and
it's not
talk
like
the whole
Plesac
time,
doesn't know his stuff either. He knows his stuff
yeah,
really well.
yeah,
He's good.
I
He
I
just
didn't
won't
mind
shut
it.
up.
I didn't mind what he was saying one bit. It actually was kind of a breath of fresh air. So I think anybody who comes in and keeps Griffin from chatting away, that's a-okay in my book. I I obviously agree that you got to keep Chase Mydroth, but uh, I'm not as sold on Miguel Vargas, and the reason for that is I think it can go two ways. I think trading Miguel Vargas could go down as a legendarily bad move for the White Sox. If you trade Miguel Vargas somewhere and Miguel Vargas ends up being a star, ends up because of the team control you're talking about. Uh, ends up being a star. Yes, it could easily be one of those things where you say, "Gosh, can you remember when the White Sox blew that too?" All we do is talk about Fernando Tatis and what if. Um, but I think on the other side, it could be a legendarily great move because I think if he keeps us up for another month, somebody's going to overpay like crazy for Miguel Vargas. And if he regresses, which I do think he will do, you could get away with murder on this guy at this trade deadline. Especially because you need to get away with murder for something, and it's not going to be Luis Robert Jr.
Now, I believe the call that he would be traded by Memorial Day that Bob Nightingale said turned out to be incorrect. There was another mention somewhere by the end of May. I think we've got a few hours left for that to be accomplished. I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think you could have given him away by Memorial
And he keeps
Day.
getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Yeah, it's sad. He also has huge splits. He hits lefties really well. He's got an 800 something OPS against lefties. Can't hit righties a lick because he can't hit a pitch moving away from him.
Exactly. That's, I mean,
right-handed sliders.
those
So,
splits make
and
total
$15
sense.
million a year is nice for an all-star level player. $15 million a year for a guy who is the short end of a platoon, late inning defensive substitution pinch runner, kind of pricey.
I mean, $15 million a year these days is a really good price for just kind of a league average guy. That's if you can get an everyday starter for $15 million.
Oh yeah, you're good. Yeah,
that's pretty good. But yeah, I mean, he's not playing anywhere near major league starter category outside of stolen bases, and he does lead the league in stolen bases, which is
and
really
he's doing
crazy.
It just looks so easy. I mean, he's not. They're not even close. He's in it every time easily. He's learned to do his jumps. It's not just speed. He's learned to do the jumps, and he's doing it great.
He's also quite rested every time he's on base because, I mean, it is crazy to never be on base and lead the league in stolen bases.
True.
Like that's a wild stat that you can have a guy with an on-base percentage well below 300 who's leading the league in stolen bases. That's impressive. But the Luis Robert Jr. thing, I mean, I think it's just done. I don't see any world where he turns this around in the next month and a half. Do you see that happening? I mean, there's no
I
sign.
do believe, as a Luis fan, which we both are, I believe that if he were traded, there's a good chance that the change of scenery works. I believe that because he's very much a heart on his sleeve guy, and playing for this team has got to be so depressing. And that's 3 years of it now for him.
I get that. I do.
But I don't see somebody gambling on that. I don't think anybody's giving you good prospects, let alone the money. Some of the rich teams might gamble the money. They're not going to gamble the prospects for that to happen like that.
Totally. They'll gamble the money for sure, because that kind of money is nothing for the big market teams that are willing to spend money. Yeah, nobody's taking a gamble on that. Nobody is, and they shouldn't, because it's the sample size of being bad is pretty big now. He had a pretty good sample size of being good, but now it's going on and on.
Yeah, it's a year and a third. I mean, it's over 200 games. Not that he played because of injuries, but of a season.
And he's also not. He's also, and you can't fault a guy for this, but he's not making a lot of the big plays in the outfield. He's coming really close.
Yeah, he just missed one the other day that was very important, as I recall. It went for a double against the wall.
It was crucial. I mean, it's a really hard catch, but the ball's in his glove. The ball's in his glove and coming out of his glove. The game I went to in Cincinnati, the home run robbery, the ball is in his glove, and then he's just not coming back down with it. He's not holding on to the ball in these big plays. And of course, these aren't errors. A lot of these are balls that a lot of guys don't even get to. So you can't, critique him for not making that play necessarily. But that's a guy who was making that play. That's a guy who a big selling point for getting rid of him was, okay, his bat's getting a little, he can't hit sliders, but look at what he's doing out there. And now he's not even coming down with those balls. So I think you're stuck with Luis Robert. I think you're completely stuck with him. I don't think there's anything you can do to get rid of him at this point, unless you're willing to take absolutely nothing.
Well, while we're on the major disappointments, although I don't think you or I expected anything from him, but I don't think we had expected anything quite this bad. I took a look at Andrew Vaughn's stats in Charlotte, and he is hitting 188 in Charlotte.
Yeah.
And if you hit below about 350 in Charlotte, you're having a bad season because that's an incredible hitter's park and a hitter's league. He's I don't know if he's done. He may be. I mean, whatever they're trying to teach him, the teaching obviously worked well for Vargas. It worked well for a while with Colson Montgomery, but he's back on the slide again. I think they adjusted to whatever adjustment he made. But Vaughn, just nothing.
I mean, Vaughn seems to be done. There's just nothing about the way he's playing that, I'm going off eye test only, really, but obviously the numbers back up that he's done. But even just the eye test, there's nothing from Vaughn that is signifying that there is a major league level baseball player left in there. And we've talked ad nauseum about why this might have happened to Vaughn. Like, did they handle Vaughn incorrectly as he was coming up? But I mean, I think the fact of the matter is
it's been 5 years.
It's been 5 years, and he's had chances, and I know he hasn't had the best coaching, the best organizational leadership, but he's really, really, really bad. And I think when you get to 3 reallys before the word bad, you're in a lot of trouble. Now, the one thing that's proving us all wrong in that is Javi Baez right now, who somehow, we've spent the last 5 solid years saying he's really, really, really bad, and now all of a sudden you're like,
all-star center fielder.
All-star center fielder Javi Baez, the one guy on the Tigers you thought you weren't going to have to care about in 2025.
2 of them. No, the Tigers have 2 of them.
No,
that's why they're so good. Too. Spencer Torkelson. I would have said Spencer Torkelson's through, and now he's coming. I don't know what he's hitting. I've checked it, but he's hitting a ton.
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, Torkelson's like a low number MVP vote kind of guy. It's crazy. That one's less surprising to me because Torkelson was still always sort of in development. It was just what can't go wrong. Torkelson's actually probably your best argument that Vaughn isn't done. The Baez thing is just shocking. Obviously the Tigers were destined to be a lot better than the White Sox this year. But I did not expect that to be one of the reasons that they are so much better than the White Sox this year. But yeah, I would be surprised if we see Vaughn in a White Sox uniform again for a substantial amount of time from this point on. I just don't think there's anything there to work with. And I know that we don't have any position players, but you can't just bring up a guy because he exists if he's going to hit 150 at the major league level.
I'd say Elko comes up before him.
I would think so. I mean, I was surprised Elko went down.
I am too. I thought Elko deserved it. Not that I think he's good, necessarily thought, hey, this guy's a full-time major leaguer. He's got it made. But he deserved another several weeks, a month to make adjustments because he was tearing it up in AAA.
Elko going back down to me seems like they knew something that he needed to be working on. Because otherwise it makes no sense to send him down with Vaughn. That was just baffling. My phone was blowing up with like, wait, we're sending both of them down at the same time. There's whatever logic there. It has to be an insider knowledge thing that he had something very specific he needed to work on that was glaring at the major league level that they wanted him to work out in Charlotte before they bring him back up. I think he
strikes out a lot, and it could be something about being a little more choosy. Oh, speaking of choosy, I spoke of it. I'll talk of it anyway. One of the regulars we have not gotten to is Lenyn Sosa. Okay, Sosa is hitting 280, which is way above league average and way above himself. It was a career 210 hitter coming in.
Yeah,
Sosa's hitting 280 with a 298 on base percentage.
I know.
He has 4 walks. a third of the way through the season, he has 4 walks. And he's, of course,
He
a
looks
terrible
like
second
looks
baseman.
like he's up to 5. He's up
He's
to
up to
5.
5. Wow. Somebody must have bounced for it. Uh, it's, uh, and they're, of course, the poor guys, he and Vargas both trying to play first base. Sosa the other day had to play at first and neglected the fact that he has to have his foot on the bag. And that just happens. It's not his job. He's over there learning on the fly. But that was a costly one. But yeah, that stat 280 on base, and 280 batting average and 298 on base percentage.
It's amazing.
So he's got a below average OPS because of that, with a 280 batting average.
That's just wild to me. To have 5 walks and 43 strikeouts, but have a pretty good looking batting average is really, that's kind of shocking, kind of fascinating. We should take a break here though, and then we will come back and talk some more Sox. We'll talk some pitching, I would assume, and a little bit about what we have moving forward. So hang in there. We'll be right back on Sharing Sox. Welcome back to Sharing Sox. We just got done dissecting Andrew Vaughn. We should talk about the other Andrew, though. Benintendi, who almost hit for the cycle the other day, which, if you had asked me if I thought he'd hit for a season cycle before the season started, I'm not sure I would have bought in that he was going to get all 4 of the types of hits in one season. He's got his batting averages up to 234, the OBP's over 306. Do you see Benintendi as being movable at this point?
Benintendi is movable if they swallow salary.
Yeah.
Because unlike Luis, where somebody on the money side would take the chance because the 220 millions coming up are options. They don't have to do them. They just lose this year's money. In Benintendi's case, they lose 47 million or something. Well, this season would be prorated, but 15 million a year, 15 million plus a year for 2.5 or more years. So I think the Sox would have to swallow salary, and I don't really see Jerry as a big salary swallower. He's had cases where they've cut people and swallowed salary, but where they did it in a trade, nothing comes to mind.
No, I can't think of a good example of that off the top of my head either. So, yeah, they would absolutely have to swallow salary. That being said, his numbers, he's got the 6 home runs now, so he's actually showing a little bit of pop. He's not striking out at an insane rate. It's not a great rate. It's around 24%. But he is better than I expected him to be. So I do think there's a world where if you're willing to swallow some salary, you can get an okay prospect back for him. And
he's also a terrible
point,
fielder.
might as well.
He's still a terrible fielder.
Yeah, he's a terrible fielder. He is. And if you're a terrible fielder in left field, it means you're the worst fielder on the field, most likely at all times. Occasionally you get a bad first baseman in that mix, but left field is where you hide your worst outfielder. So to be,
of course, he got hidden for many years in Boston because there's hardly any left field there.
Yeah, it's kind of a perfect
the Manny
place
Ramirez impact.
If Boston was trying to contend, not a bad place to try to send him back, because you can hide a bad left fielder in Boston way easier than you can hide them anywhere else.
And he knows the wall.
So much less ground to cover. He knows the wall. You can have pretty bad range because you're covering so much less turf.
And you could have no arm, which he has no arm.
Yeah, and no arm. Yeah, it's kind of ideal. You kind of got to hope. Another possible opportunity would be Houston, because those Crawford boxes are also comically, embarrassingly short with a higher wall. You don't have to have a great arm in left in Houston either. But yeah, his defense liability is a big problem when you're talking about getting much in return for him. But I'm at least thankful that it's possible, because I certainly did not see that being the case when this season started.
No, no, I think that's a very, very long shot. I think they have to trade, and I wrote this last week. I think they have to trade one of the young pitchers. I think where they will get a good return is one of the young pitchers. And yes, you have said several times, and you're absolutely correct. One or two are going to have Tommy John in the next year. So be it. And it's also
Yeah.
true that Noah Shultz and Hagen Smith both have kind of hit a wall.
Yeah.
They're walking way too many people, especially Smith, but Schultz too, and Schultz is getting hit. Maybe trying not to walk so many people. I don't know. So the idea that those two guys are going to be up next year, and suddenly we've got this powerhouse starting pitching lineup, maybe a little stretch. But I think one of the guys, can't say which one. Jonathan Cannon, probably. Maybe Davis Martin, one of those two. The one who's done the best. You actually can. I looked it up. You can trade Shane Smith. You can trade a Rule 5 acquisition. But the team to whom you trade him goes by the same rules. They have to keep him on the major league roster all year, or San Francisco can buy him back, which I'm sure they would do in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I mean, Shane Smith is definitely the one I would not. I would try not to deal him right now because I'm kind of in on Shane Smith. I think
yeah, I too. To me, Cannon is the most likely. He's the
yeah,
one I toss out there, see what I could get, and I don't want much. This is not we've got to get rid of him in exchange for something, but we're in desperate need of a shortstop. Nobody's calling Colson Montgomery a shortstop anymore, and
no,
Caleb
not at
Bonham,
all.
who's the other one in the system. I think the predictions are he comes up in 2028, and they're already writing about maybe he's just a third baseman. We can't have. I think the rules are against 8 third basemen. Maybe it's okay.
Yeah,
But at any rate, we need a shortstop. We're going to need a center fielder, and outfielders in general. Tauchman's doing great since he's been back, but he's going to be gone. That's one for sure that'll be traded. Of the ones they brought in to trade, Rojas is worthless. Slater, I don't know, maybe a hot dog vendor. Tauchman is hitting quite well. If he keeps it up for another month and a half, you might get something decent for Tauchman as a rental.
yeah. I mean, if Tauchman keeps up numbers anywhere near where he is right now, you absolutely will be able to trade him to
And he's
someone.
a
I
good
mean,
defender.
he's hitting his on base percentage is 462, which
Well, that's not going to continue. But even if it's 390, right.
That's what I mean. If it's even like in the realm of that, you're talking about a guy that you'll get something for. Obviously, our sample size is tiny, and it's probably not realistic with Tauchman, but it's possible that he will be able to sustain at least somewhat, and in that case, you could get something for him. It certainly doesn't look like this upcoming draft is going to bring in anybody who's close to major league ready. From the projections I've looked at for what the White Sox will do, it's shortstops, but it's going to be high schoolers, and that means you're years and years away from playing shortstop at the major league level. Since the White Sox do not have a top pick in this draft, despite being the worst
number
team in
11.
baseball.
Just
terrible.
I mean, they can get by certainly this year because there are no expectations with Mydroth. But really, he should be at second. He's an okay-ish shortstop. Excellent second baseman. Because he doesn't have a big, strong arm for shortstop.
He looks like a second baseman.
Put him over at second, and he's a really good defender. Now you got to do something with Lenyn Sosa. Becomes a DH or first baseman.
I mean, he'll figure out where his foot goes when they're throwing it over there at some point, I think. Lenyn Sosa as your DH, he's hitting 280, but man, that's not a sexy DH scenario.
No.
A DH who doesn't take walks is kind of frowned upon these days. and a
and
DH
doesn't
who
have any
doesn't
power.
really hit home runs is
Yeah.
really frowned upon these days. So I don't know what you do with Sosa. I guess you just kind of gotta hope that he can figure out first base, and that
Of
will
course, one
pan
of the
out in some
complaints
way.
with Vaughn, although it's one of many about Vaughn defensively, uh, mostly he's just so damn slow, but was height, because they've been
Yeah,
calling him 6 feet tall, and then you could look back at his old college height was 5'10", and he probably didn't grow between college and the pros.
probably
And
not.
the 5'10" may even be exaggerated. Sosa's short too. I mean, it's about the same height. So you're not getting what you had with Elko, which is
Whoa,
suddenly a
whoa,
big reach.
whoa. Well, hold on.
Oh, no, okay, I'm sorry. You and I are the same height. We should say Sosa is short for a major league baseball player.
For a major league first baseman, I would say. As someone who is the same height as Mookie Betts and Tommy Edman, you can be that is the gold standard for height in Major League Baseball.
And
If
I believe
anything,
Andrew Benintendi.
they're 2 inches too tall to be Major League Baseball players, in my opinion. No, I get what you're saying, though. That is a short first baseman. It is, And my softball team, though, to be fair, our first baseman, I think, is around 5'5", and he's a vacuum over there. Footwork is pristine. He's also 52. So, I don't think we can make excuses for these guys. They're Major League Baseball players. I have a guy who works for Animal Services, and he's over there scooping up every throw that you send him. Now, I will say, if you throw the ball 6 feet in the air, it's sailing into the dugout. Just not a lot of wingspan on this man. But yeah, those are short Major League first basemen. But it's not a deal breaker if you can produce offensively. You can deal with the first
Well, and
baseman
also Sosa's
order.
much quicker than Vaughn. I mean, there are statues that are much quicker than Vaughn.
I was
Uh,
gonna say, yeah, pretty much anything. I think there's a broken down VW Bug in front of our building right now that I've seen move a lot faster than Andrew Vaughn. Uh, yeah, for real, for real. Moving forward, the White Sox. They're going to play lowly Baltimore, which we said at the beginning of this. But this is a key moment for Baltimore, I think. The stakes would seemingly be crazy low for an 18-win team playing a 19-win team at the end of May. This is I would say, a season-defining series coming up for the Baltimore Orioles. If you lose this series to the Chicago White Sox, I think you kind of have to hang your head in defeat and say we've already blown the 2025 campaign if you're Baltimore, especially since these games are in Baltimore. We've got these three in Baltimore. Potentially, you could get out the brooms for the White Sox on this theory. Baltimore is so bad that I think the White Sox have a shot to win 2 out of 3 at Baltimore. I don't know why I feel that, because we're the 18-win team. They're the 19-win team. But I do feel that way. And then it gets really, really hard for the White Sox.
well, certainly 4 games with Detroit, even though they're at home, the Tigers are just red hot. And as you say, even Javi Baez is out there producing offensively. The Tigers have been great pitching. If it's 4 games, they're bound to round into Super Bowl for one of them.
They are. In fact, this is brutal. The White Sox are going to face Flaherty, Job, Mize, and Skubal in this series in that order. That is wow. So I mean, maybe they can win one of those because they will have Smith going up against Jackson Job, but I just
And then
that's
after
gonna be
that,
rough.
the Royals have been kind of on a skid lately.
The Royals have been on a skid for sure, but they are going to go up against right now the guy who is kind of your Cy Young favorite in that second game, looks like. And then they're going to go to Houston, which Houston's not electric by any means, but Houston's always a threat. Then they're going to go to Texas, who's trying to gain some ground in that AL West, and then they're going to host St. Louis, who's one of the biggest surprises of the
On the
whole
upside.
season.
Yeah.
That is
Before we get too
absolutely
far,
brutal.
Kansas City, the big problem with Kansas City has been pitchers on the IL, starting pitchers on the IL. I think they're coming off. I think both of the starting pitchers on the IL will be back by the White Sox series.
Yeah.
So that doesn't bode well.
And then it seems to be the entire month of June, if I'm being honest, because then you're going to face Toronto, who's a 500 team, but gaining ground in the AL East. You're going to face the Diamondbacks, who are a 500 team, but are incredibly talented and just kind of underperforming right now in an extremely challenging division, minus the Rockies. And then they're going to open the month of July in Los Angeles against the Dodgers. This could be an absolutely devastating month for the White Sox.
Well, fortunately for me, I don't have to watch the devastation because I'm going to be over in the British Isles and Ireland for the whole month of June. So I'll just look into the scores in the morning. Get up in the morning. Oh, it's still in the 8th inning. I'll watch the rest of it.
You'll be having your first sticky toffee pudding of the day.
Yes.
As you see, the White Sox haven't won since you've been in Europe. Yeah. It's going to be a rough one, but we should call it here. Do you have any final points of discussion before we sign
off? Well, one thing we should think about as soon as we get up, we'll talk about one of the weeks that we're going to be on the Isle of Man. Now, I'm not taking a computer, but of course we'll have my phone. And I'm betting there has never been a Chicago White Sox podcast from the Isle of Man. And I could probably do my part on the phone because you do all the hard work.
I think we should aim for that. I think we should aim for the first ever Chicago White Sox podcast from the Isle of Man.
It may be the first major league podcast from the Isle of Man.
It's going to be really disappointing when we, do this and we celebrate it, and then someone who listens to this sends a note that says, actually, there's been 7 podcasts about the Chicago White Sox from the Isle of Man. There's just so many podcasts these days, you never know where they're coming from. But I think we should make it our goal to be the first ever Chicago White Sox podcast from the Isle of Man. Could be exciting. And, obviously, there's a lot of religious tension and history in those parts. I don't know if there's any Catholics up there. It's possible there's been.
Well, when we're in Ireland, I believe we'll have some Catholics.
You will definitely have Catholics in Ireland for sure. I don't know about the Isle of Man. I'm not well versed in what's going on.
It's more British, probably not very Catholic.
All right. Well, then there probably wasn't a Pope-based podcast happening that mentioned he's a Chicago White Sox. So it should be the first mention of the Chicago White Sox in a podcast from the Isle of Man. And that will be quite exciting for us and the whole world. And we could alter the geopolitical climate of the world with the next podcast. And I don't think that's an unrealistic goal. So that's going to be what we aim for. Let's hope the White Sox can survive these upcoming weeks. Take down lowly Baltimore, get some wins, get some confidence. Let's see if the Luis Robert Jr. Turnaround can be the first miracle achieved by Pope Leo. He's going to need it, and we're going to need him. But thanks so much for listening, and we will catch you next time right here on Sharing Sox.